Okay, now following up with the last video, let's talk a little bit about saturated fats, arteries, carbohydrates, heart disease. Um, let's talk about what exactly these cholesterol plaques are first. The cholesterol that collects on artery walls is not random fat that's floating around in your bloodstream. The cholesterol plaques that form on blood vessels are actually scabs. Those are scabs that form on damaged parts of your artery wall. Now, what damages your arteries? Cigarette smoke, which I am guilty of. Carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates. There's many things that damage your artery walls, but the most important of these is refined carbohydrates and sugars. They shrivel your arteries, just like they shrivel your nerves, like in diabetic neuropathy. Now, what happens is that when you have refined carbohydrates that damage your artery walls, your body sends cholesterol to grow at the site into a scab. It's not plaque, it's a scab, to cover up that damaged part of the artery. Now, once that part of the artery is healed, there's an enzyme called lipoprotein lipase that is supposed to remove that plaque or that scab. Now, there's a couple issues in heart disease. One is the artery damage, which has to be addressed, because if the artery doesn't heal, if it never heals, if you never have enough thiamine or folate or anything for your arteries to heal, or protein, you actually, the scab will never go away. It'll just stay there. And then the second part of this is that the cholesterol plaque needs to be, once it's done, digested basically by an enzyme called lipoprotein lipase, which is actually produced from sulfurous amino acids. And that is actually, the source of that is meat. Just like the source of protein is meat for repairing the artery walls. There's a very good movie called Fathead. And it shows a guy who did the same thing that they did in in the McDonald's movie. Super Size Me. And what he basically did was he did the same thing, except he cut out all the refined carbohydrates. His cholesterol dropped to the healthiest levels that anyone could possibly have. And he lost weight. He lost, like, I don't know how many pounds. Simply by cutting out refined carbohydrates. And we know this now, that refined carbohydrates cause an insulin response that stores fat. Triggers an insulin response to stores fat. That's why in the Atkins diet you cut out refined carbohydrates. Also, simply cutting out saturated fats and proteins out of your diet can kill you. You need it for brain health, for what else do you need it for? Eye health. You need it for many, many things. And for example, caprylic acid, saturated fat, one of the strongest antiviral, antifungal compounds out there. You can get it in pills. They have pills of saturated fat, a single saturated fat called caprylic acid. I'm not going to tell you that if you eat some butter, you're going to get 10 times the amount of caprylic acid that you would get if you ate that entire bottle of caprylic acid pills if you just ate some butter. I'm not going to tell you that. It's very important for many things. You need it for your skin structure. You need it for your cell wall. You need it for everything. Now, the important thing is increasing your levels of lipoprotein lipase. Now, there's an enzyme, or there's an enzymatic cycle called the sulfoxidation cycle. It's very important. Now, the key mineral ion in this cycle is molybdenum. This is what it's called reduces sulfites, which are used up sulfur molecules, back into sulfates, which are healthy sulfur molecules that can then be used to produce lipoprotein lipase. Now, the richest source of this is beans. Now, there was a theory out there that the reason that high fiber foods reduce heart disease is because it increases, they absorb bile, which is essentially made out of cholesterol. Now, they found that in foods foods like whole wheat and other non-molybdenum but high fiber containing foods, it reduced cholesterol levels by about, heart disease levels actually, excuse me, by about 20%. 20%. All that fiber reduced heart disease by 20%. That's statistically significant, but that's not, in real world terms, very significant. There was another study they did in Japan of different types of high fiber foods, and they found that beans actually had an 89, in the control group that ate beans, they had an 89% reduction in heart disease. 89%, compared with 20% in the other study with simply just high fiber carbohydrates. Now, why is this important? Beans, legumes all contain molybdenum, which is part of the sulfoxidation cycle, which is how your body produces lipoprotein lipase with these sulfur molecules, which actually digests these cholesterol scabs on your artery walls. Not only that, they contain lots of thiamine and folate, which are very good for your general health, especially very good for your artery health, especially your general health. Now, I wrote an article about this where I document all of this, all the studies, and I show how I even link to the nutritional content of these foods, and I show how foods that are high in molybdenum in general are all shown to reduce your levels of heart disease drastically, 89% in the Japanese study, while non-molybdenum containing high fiber foods like whole wheat only reduce it by 20. Now, pulling cholesterol out through your liver bile and forcing your body to produce more bile from the loss from high fiber foods absorbing the cholesterol contained in bile, that's not an efficient way of addressing the scab that is already on the artery wall. This is known that lipoprotein lipase is the enzyme that digests these scabs. Are they going to synthetically produce lipoprotein lipase and give it to you? No, they're not. They're going to stick a pump in your artery wall and then pump it up until they make the scab smaller by crushing it against the artery wall and opening you up. If they would produce bacterially fermented lipoprotein lipase and just give it in pill form to people, you would have no problem. And I'm sure now somebody's going to get rich off of it. Several people have made money off of my ideas and research already, because I don't have the resources or a patent lawyer or anything like that. But if you merely eat beans, legumes, beans such as lentils, garbanzo beans, black beans, pinto beans, peas even, pea soup, for example, hummus, Korean bean paste, you reduce your risk of heart disease by 89%. 89. That's way beyond statistically significant. That is a heart disease destroyer. I'm not allowed to say the other word that I would use. Now, the stuff about saturated fats, that's crap. They're not the cause. The cholesterol plaques are symptom. Refined carbohydrates are really the worst thing you can do for yourself. Not only does it cause you to store these fats, it causes artery wall damage. It's not good for you. Anyway, the point of this video is, at the end of the day, eat beans. Eat lots of beans and legumes. Include them in your diets. They're the richest source of magnesium, molybdenum, phosphorus, manganese, of almost any food group. They're, especially when they're organically grown. You got to get them organic, because if you don't, they're not going to contain the minerals because they're not in the soil. Anyway, okay, I guess that's enough for now. Remember, eat beans. 89%. 89% reduction in heart disease. That is unheard of. link to the article I wrote, actually, with the studies after this. Okay, thank you.